how critical and how complex the demand planning is.
What to expect in future and to prepare accordingly.
Those demand planning, how do you really manage and what kind of challenges you face?
Every 2 or 3 weeks, you should refresh the demand, how the offtakes are happening. Then you take corrective action. I've spent more than 7 years with Dabur India.
Demands create supply. You have not demanded, you do not get that supply.
So I think the supply chain in this aspect is in a transitionary phase right now. To try to create more flexibility within your supply chain.
See, the challenge that we face in FMCG is the warehousing is not very modern.
What kind of a pressure as a supply chain professional you have to ensure the costing?
If the cost comes down, then only the growth will be able to sustain itself.
What are the global aspirations of the Dabur or expansion plan?
We have the right to win. We are as an organization more than 100 years old. We want to make sure that the product which we launch is complete trusted by us, and hence we can ensure that the customer also trusts the product. An FMCG company cannot put all the costs on top of the consumer's head and demand that money from them. They will not be paying.
So what kind of a competition is being faced with these upcoming spiritual gurus brands? नमस्कार दोस्तों, लॉजिस्टिक शक्ति के पॉडकास्ट चैनल में एक बार फिर से आप लोग का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। जैसा हमारा आपको प्रॉमिस है, वादा है, कमिटमेंट है कि हम लॉजिस्टिक शक्ति में आपको हमारे इस प्रोफेशन और इस इंडस्ट्री से जुड़े हुए टॉप लीडर्स को इंट्रोड्यूस कराएंगे। और जो हमारा सीज़न 2 चल रहा है, जिस पे हमने लार्ज फोकस रखा है कि हम सर्विस सीकर्स, क्लाइंट साइड का पर्सपेक्टिव आपको शेयर कराएं। हमारे लास्ट के वीडियोस और हमारे पॉडकास्ट में आपने देखा होगा कि हमने हेल्थ केयर सप्लाई चेन और फार्मा सप्लाई चेन के ऊपर में बहुत इंटेंस डिस्कशन करा। और आज का जो डिस्कशन है वो बहुत और भी ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग होने वाला है। यहाँ पे आज हम इंट्रोड्यूस करा रहे हैं 2 वर्टिकल को एक साथ, मतलब सर्विस सीकर का रिप्रेजेंटेशन फ्रॉम अ क्लाइंट पर्सपेक्टिव और सर्विस प्रोवाइडर का पर्सपेक्टिव फ्रॉम अ इंडस्ट्री के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से। तो लॉजिस्टिक्स और सप्लाई चेन, लॉजिस्टिक्स एज ए इंडस्ट्री, सप्लाई चेन एज ए फंक्शन। तो आज हम टॉप लीडर्स को इंट्रोड्यूस करा रहे हैं, मिलवा रहे हैं। और आज का डिस्कशन जो है एक चैट शो जैसा है, जहां पे बहुत सारी लर्निंग मिलने वाली है। और ऑफ कोर्स जो हमारा डिस्कशन रहता है सिंपल एक लेमैन में, ताकि आप बात करते करते लर्न भी कर पाएं और कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज को समझ भी पाएं। एंड जैसा मैंने आपको लास्ट पुराने वीडियोस में बोला कि लॉजिस्टिक शक्ति इज ऑन द मिशन ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग इंडियन लॉजिस्टिक्स इंडस्ट्रीज लैंडस्केप थ्रू कलेक्टिव स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ आवर इंडस्ट्रीज एंड आवर फंक्शनल्स लीडर इटसेल्फ। मतलब जो ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग स्ट्रेंथ है उसको कलेक्टिव स्ट्रेंथ के साथ पूरी इंडस्ट्री को और सप्लाई चेन फंक्शन को ट्रांसफॉर्म करना, ये लॉजिस्टिक शक्ति का मिशन है। और इसी मिशन के तहत अभी हमारा और एक बड़ा प्रोग्राम ग्लोबल एडिशन लॉन्च हो रहा है इन दुबई इन द मंथ ऑफ अप्रैल 2025, राइट। सो विदाउट गोइंग फर्दर into the between you and my guest, I would like to introduce you with the 2 guests here. Mr. Ramesh Krishnan, who is going to represent the industry in today's chat show. He is one of the veteran who has already been appear one of the earlier season 1 podcast as one of my co-host. So he has all the way entire 360-degree experience and professional working with top leading companies. Currently, he is into the supply chain consulting and also serving on a part-time or freelance basis, one of the director of India's leading packaging transportation company, Agarwal Packers. And beyond this, we have another guest, most important and one of the veteran leader into supply chain function. He is a global supply chain head of India's finest FMCG company and one of the number 1 company in Ayurveda, and they are all in personal care, they are into health care, they are into oral care and Ayurveda and certain foods products as well. So जो आपको बोलने से डेफिनेटली आइडिया हो गया होगा कि जो आज हमारे ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन हेड हैं वो डाबर इंडिया को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं इंडिया में. सो हेल्प मी वेलकम टू बोथ ऑफ आवर गेस्ट मिस्टर रमेश कृष्णन एंड सप्लाई चेन हेड ऑफ डाबर इंडिया श्री सम्राट सहगल जी.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, sir. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Right.
It's indeed a privilege to be here.
Absolutely. So today's discussion is going to be on FMCG supply chain and customer perspective and the industry perspective. Industry perspective by Ramesh Saab and customer perspective from Samrat Sehgal Saab. So let me start with the first question itself. You just give us a little brief about your journey. We will keep it a little short and then we'll come to the functional discussions.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think this is my first podcast which I am attending, so it's a completely different experience. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I think I am privileged to represent my organization also, Dabur India. So
Thank you
good
for
to be
accepting our invitation of Logistics Shakti, sir. Thank you very much.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
So if I have to talk about my journey, I think I would start from my education itself. I did my engineering way back in 1992 to 96 from NIT Kurukshetra, and then I did my post-graduation from NITI Mumbai, and after that I started my professional journey, and in total I have spent about 25 years now in supply chain. I think more than half of it has been in the FMCG industry itself. I've spent more than 7 years with Dabur India, and I think I am experiencing one of the best periods of my journey.
Absolutely.
Working within this company and making the supply chain, developing the supply chain function.
Thank you, Samrat Saab. Similarly, I would like to hear a brief introduction of Ramesh ji as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It was indeed a pleasure. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. This is the second time in this Logistics Shakti I am participating. Though I have been very regularly participating in promoting this Logistics Shakti. My journey has been for nearly more than 40 years now, 42 years. And I started my career with actually other side. On the other side, by being the customer side, I was in ITC Bhadrachalam, paper industry. And then I was in Colgate, in proper FMCG. And NAFED, they both were FMCG product. Then I got into logistics and I was in transportation. I was in Patel Roadways, I was in transportation. I was in express, courier, LB. Then I was into freight forwarding, I was into warehousing, I was in Stellar and Future Group, representing everything. In future, I was representing both sides, in fact, as a...
So we have got a very right person to represent the industry.
Yes. And then I also was in Sahara as a supply chain head for nearly 1.5-2 years.
Got the customer perspective.
So I have the perspective of both sides.
Yeah.
We had around 62 warehouses pan-India and huge inventory planning, insurance, complete supply chain I was handling.
लेकिन आज आप एडवोकेट हैं इंडस्ट्री के.
लेकिन हाँ, then I came back again to logistics. I was in Stellar and again in this side. Now I am with Agarwal Packers Movers as the director. So it's a very interesting journey, and it will be really interesting to interact with Samrat ji because I have also having exposure to with Colgate and Sahara and NAFED. I have exposure to FMCG, so it would be really interesting to interact and.
Thank you, Ramesh sir. Today's discussion we would like to focus largely into FMCG supply chain, right? So when we start the FMCG supply chain, discussion or think about it. So demand planning or demand forecasting should come, the first thing. How critical and how complex the demand planning is, because SKUs are, in number of SKUs are too many. Starting from the pouch of 2 rupees or 10 gram or 20 gram of a shampoo and all the way 2 kg Dabur Chyawanprash, right? So those demand planning, how do you really manage and what kind of challenges you face?
If I may add, it's also in respect to the short shelf life, and huge competition in the brand, and sometimes there are also seasonal. So this is a challenge. So how do you handle this?
So I think first of all, let us try to understand what exactly forecasting is. Forecasting is a widely used but widely abused word also. And why I say so is because forecasting is supposed to actually not give or predict the future. It is actually supposed to tell you what to expect in future and to prepare accordingly. So the way I think one should look at forecasting is that you should try to predict what could be the demand, and it should not be a precise number which we are trying to predict. You should actually look at multiple cases of demand. There could be a general mid case of demand, and then you should look at what could be the lower case of demand and higher case. What could be the best case scenario, what could be the low case scenario, and what could be the medium case scenario, and accordingly you should plan for it. So that is when you are say away in horizon, so you are predicting what is going to happen in 3 months or 6 months. So that's the way you should look at. And when you are actually coming close to the period, you should try to refresh that demand more frequently. And when you refresh the demand more frequently, then you are able to catch those signals which you may have missed earlier. So some signals, for example, there is a seasonal product we were talking about. So you start the forecasting of seasonal products sitting in winters actually.
Okay.
In January, I will forecast what I am going to sell in March, April and May for a seasonal, maybe a foods category juice product, for example. For juice, forecasting will start in the month of January when the temperatures are 8 degrees, 9 degrees. How do you predict the demand? So you say that, okay, this is my market size and I am 65% market share. So this could be my number. Then you also predict that what kind of weather patterns are there, whether this summer is going to be hotter than last year. So is the growth expected to be more?
So from different sources, data is being collected.
Data has to be collected. With that data, then you try to predict a mid case of demand. Then you also think about what could be the low case in case the summers are not so warm, or if the summers become warmer than what you are expected, what could be the two outliers. Within that range, the demand will lie somewhere. Then you start preparing for it. And as you get closer, as you get closer to the period, then you try to refresh that. And then when you are experiencing the season, at that point of time, the refreshes have to be more frequent. So every week you should refresh the demand, how the offtakes are happening. Then you take corrective action. And so this is basically on one side, which is on the demand side.
So very highly agile system is there.
Has to be very agile. I was coming
and
to that.
is it a compromise between wastage and loss of sales?
Yeah, so I'll come to that also. I think before that, what we need to do is that we should understand that when the season is going to end, closer to that period, you should then start looking at when do you have to start reducing your inventory. So beginning of the season, you may want to keep higher inventory. You want to keep 4 weeks of inventory, 6 weeks of inventory. But when you are approaching the end of season, for example, June or mid of June, when you are, if it is a foods business, a juice product you are selling, then what you do is that juices, the sale will be very high, say from March up to end of June. So mid of June is when you start tapering down your inventory, because now you know that it is end of season. And when you keep reducing, you also keep collecting the signals of demand more frequently. Every 3 days you try to check whether what is the weather forecast for maybe next 2 or 3 weeks, whether the summers are going to extend or whether they are going to end. So those kind of predictions you do, and more frequent demand sensing is being done. This is on demand side.
Got it.
Apart from that, you already know that your demand or forecast accuracy may be 60%, 70%. That at best, that's the range. So what you do on the other side, what you do is you try to create more flexibility within your supply chain, which is you try to create more distributed manufacturing, which means you try to be closer to the
consumption part.
Yeah, you try to be closer to the consumer. So you try to have more number of factories which are closer to the consumer, so that your lead time to deliver the product reduces. Then you also try to basically have the whole distribution network in a way that you are closer to the customer. These are the other actions also which you have to drive. And I think lastly, what you can also do is, rather than keeping a finished goods inventory in the system, you keep higher raw material and packing material inventory so
I think
that
this
your
point
system
will be on
remains
inventory
agile.
planning. We are talking about demand planning. The next one comes to inventory planning.
But these are all linked in
Interconnected,
They are
yeah, yes,
interconnected.
so
So,
you-
yes, yes.
Correct.
you do what, as I was saying, that forecasting is not only about predicting the future, but try to understand what could happen and then prepare for it. So this whole preparation piece is also a part of the overall demand planning, because if you do the demand planning and if you know the range, then you take the other actions also so that you are ready to service that demand and ensure, to your point, whether it is a compromise between service and
Loss of sale or,
wastage.
yeah,
So
wastage, yeah.
so I think FMCG companies want to have 99% plus service levels. So these are the other actions which you take so that you are able to meet the demand.
So what is, Ramesh Saab, service provider's perspective, yeah.
See, the challenge that we face in FMCG is the service has to be done on FIFO basis. And it is not only batch, it's day-wise production has to be catered. So often what happens is, in case of FMCG, the warehousing is not very modern. Warehousing is not as modern as probably fashion or FMCG or auto or FMCD or auto. Often many FMCGs, there are exceptions, but there are FMCG who do not use barcoding or do not do WMS also. They do Excel-based WMS. So it becomes a challenge to really maintain that. I'm talking about even few.
From a demand planning perspective, there is hardly any involvement of service provider at this stage.
नो डिमांड प्लानिंग करने के बाद जब उसका जो आफ्टर इफेक्ट होता है, जो स्टॉक आ जाता है, उसको फिर फीफो में करना पड़ता है, वहाँ हमें चैलेंज आता है मोस्टली. और
डिमांड प्लानिंग में तो इन्वॉल्वमेंट ऑफ द
प्लानिंग में हमारा कोई
लॉजिस्टिक्स का इतना इन्वॉल्वमेंट नहीं रहता है. इट इज लाइज कस्टमर एंड itself. So if then it's demand side, in between the discussion came out, be nearer to the consumption for a better supply chain or better demand planning and cost optimization, either way, efficiency into the system. So having the third party manufacturing is a better solution. So what is the Dabur's planning or the overall supply chain perspective? How this third party manufacturing going and how quality is being maintained?
So I think third party manufacturers are an integral part of any FMCG company, and Dabur also looks at third party manufacturers as partners rather than just manufacturers for us. And I think so your question is in two parts. Right. First part, let me try to address that. So third party manufacturers, they provide multiple benefits in terms of, first of all, is proximity to the consumption centers. You can have more manufacturing locations from where you can produce and service your product. So that is one benefit which the 3P manufacturers provide. Second, of course, is that when you have distributed manufacturing, it reduces your costs of distribution also. So because your transportation costs can sometimes become very, very high. You have manufacturing facility, one single manufacturing facility in north, and you have to cart your product right up to Kanyakumari in south. So the transportation costs increase drastically. So third party manufacturers help you to basically be closer and have multiple locations from where you can produce and service your product. And apart from that, the organizations cannot put their own capex everywhere, So you have a limited amount of cash. You want to invest that probably in activities which can grow your business faster, more in
activities of marketing.
Absolutely, more in core activities. Yeah. So that also, the third party manufacturing helps you to basically allocate cash very, very judiciously. And we look at the third party manufacturers strategically. And when I say strategically, it means they sometimes are involved right at the stage of product, when you envisage a particular product, when from development stage itself, we start involving them. And in many cases, that happens. Sometimes, of course, the product is our formulation is ours, and we give it to them and they do the manufacturing. But we try to involve them right from the initial stage.
So they become a part of a planning and the part of an internal team itself.
Absolutely. That is on one side. Apart from that, quality is definitely a very, very important aspect. So it starts the selection of a third party manufacturer itself, the quality team is involved in that. We also look at the overall processes. They should be following the stringent processes which our organization follows and stands for. It is a must. We also deploy our own quality professionals in the factories where our products are getting manufactured, and right from raw material stage up to finished goods manufacturing and dispatch, the quality teams are involved, their own internal quality teams, and our quality representatives also who are based there. So they are also involved. So that's how we actually work with our third party manufacturer.
So, Samrat Sahab, these generally could be a common manufacturer for multiple brands, or exclusivities are there?
Most of the time, economies of scale will come if they are manufacturing for others also. If they only produce for us and they cater to one geography, I think it will not make economic sense for the third party manufacturer, and for us also, because the costs, overheads, etc. could become exorbitantly high. So it makes sense to have players who are doing that work for others, for themselves also, and for other. And we don't mind if they are doing work for others also.
Do you have any
Yes,
service provider is
supply
still
chain
not
has a
getting involved into it?
It definitely affects the supply chain.
I'll just interrupt. We do have our very, very tight NDAs, so our formulations have to be kept very, very confidential.
Yes,
Of course.
So non-disclosure
That is the core,
agreements,
yeah.
absolutely. That's the core of the relationship.
And the trust factor becomes very, very important.
See, it definitely impacts the supply chain, this thing. What happens earlier, it was at the place of origin. It used to be, factory used to be at the place of origin, at the place of sourcing. So, sourcing, the primary movement of the commodity used to be much smaller, and the secondary mode, which is finished goods, is to be larger and catering to all India. So, and which is costlier. Okay. So, definitely FMCG saves money. But logistic industry loses money. Second thing is when it came to the place of consumption, so primary transport definitely comes down, and primary transport is always done by mostly organized sector, because commodities are mostly unorganized sector. Secondary is done by organized sector.
Correct.
So it impacts the organized sector.
Large line haul players may lose, but regional player may gain.
So when it came to near consumption, primary transport is reduced and secondary transport is also reduced.
Correct.
Okay. So it impacts both of them. Okay, so it impacts but ultimately, definitely, it's a very
overall efficiency is very important.
Overall efficiency, control on the quantity, product, everything is very good. Time to customer is very good. So overall, it's a good situation where it helps the company as well as the consumer, but it does negatively impact the logistic industry.
So efficiency and the overall economy of the scale is more important than individual companies' profit, right? So coming back to now, since
it also affects the cost. So I hope there is a benefit of cost which
end of the day it
company
passes
is able
on
to pass
to the
consumer.
Consumer.
Yeah.
So it helps to the economy
So,
as a country or as a society. So let's talk about a little bit more about warehousing and storing once we talk about the inventory, and maybe we can have certain discussion on the cost of the inventory, how the what kind of a pressure as a supply chain professional you have to ensure the costing of the inventory, because that's the biggest cost for any FMCG organizations. And of course, this lies on the ownership also lies for a service provider like warehousing service provider largely. So this is the question on the inventory cost management.
Yeah, so I think overall inventory, let us look at why inventory is kept, and then how basically we can optimize the inventory. Yeah, so if you are purely working on forecast, then you plan the inventory looking at the variabilities which are there. So one variability, the biggest, could be in the forecast itself. So forecast accuracy, if it is just about 50%, 60%, then you need to plan for that 40-50% of variability which is there. Then apart from that, transport variability is there, your own manufacturing is there. So manufacturing variability, material availability, raw material, packing material variability in that also. So these are various aspects which are there. So my view is that if you are able to move away from forecast and if you move to more of replenishment, you define the inventory norms at each and every node within your system and then try to meet those inventory norms rather than trying to fulfill a forecast. If you are able to do that, then you are able to optimize the inventory. Then your overall inventory health will improve. Your service level can also improve. And then your slob, aging inventory, etc. will definitely reduce. What needs to be done for that is, of course, the backend needs to be very, very flexible and agile. So your manufacturing facilities should be able to cater to any increased or surge in the demand signal, which is coming through this replenishment model. So I think this is the way we would want to, this is the way in which we are moving ahead, within Dabur, that we want to move away from forecast and work more for replenishment. Inventory per se is very, very important. We, the cash, if it is involved, the working capital and the cost of working capital is something which we want to reduce, because ultimately, as much as money we are able to save for the organization, we reinvest it into marketing, into activities which can actually help the organization to increase the demand. So, it is very critical, and this is the way we are trying to manage.
So the entire, the solutions what you're looking at or your process you are improving must be connected with a lot of technology and the data integration and the real-time visibility of the supply chain.
So I think replenishment, definitely very good point brought out by you. So replenishment model can work only if your system is completely
Integrated.
Your whole chain is integrated.
Since we spoke about the the demand, we spoke about the manufacturing and quality, and the inventory has become one of the critical part for any supply chain professional. So in Dabur and your portfolio, how exactly and how critically you are managing the inventory cost for your organization?
Inventory per se is something which is a favorite subject of supply chain.
Yeah.
So why I say so, let me explain.
And
First of
CFO
all,
subject is also favorite.
why it should not be there.
Yeah.
That is his favorite subject. So I think let us look at from the company's perspective overall, plus from consumers' perspective also. See, consumer is able to today place an order online sometimes, right? And he's able to wire money to you at the speed of light, right? He can click the button and the money will be in your account. His expectation is that the material or the goods is also available to him at the speed of light immediately. I am placing an order. My expectation starts that I should receive the goods now. And to be able to service is when you start keeping inventory. So you keep inventory because you are not able to forecast properly. So inventory is required basically to manage all the variabilities which are there. Variability of demand, variability of production, variability of supply, which is transportation maybe, variability of raw material, packing material availability. So all these variabilities put together is why you need inventory. But consumer is not bothered about inventory, and he is not willing to pay for it also. Absolutely. Right? So now supply chain brings in the angle of inventory because we want to cater to a service level. And there are variabilities, which is also the truth, right? So how we can reduce the variability is the question. Now, how you can reduce the variability? My take is, if you do a forecast and try to replenish a forecast, you will have a variability of forecast itself. So the challenge is how quickly and how easily you are able to move away from forecasting and you start working on a replenishment model. So you have inventory norms for all the nodes within your supply chain and try to move towards a replenishment model rather than a forecast fulfillment model.
Somewhat similar to just-in-time?
It is somewhat similar to just-in-time, but just-in-time is kind of zero inventory. Here, there will be inventory norms, but those you're not actually fulfilling a forecast. You're trying to work on a replenishment. So your target stock is there. If it reduces, then you replenish immediately. For the organization to be ready to take up this, you need a backend which should be flexible and it should be agile. So you need manufacturing which is more distributed manufacturing and agile manufacturing which is required. And many times the question is whether you want to keep finished goods inventory, which is higher in value, versus raw material, packing material inventory, because you keep the raw material, packing material inventory will cost you less. A finished goods inventory, because you have added value to it already, the cost of keeping that inventory will be higher. So the challenge is to move away from forecasting, move to replenishment, and to make sure that agile manufacturing is there, and also make sure that rather than keeping everything as finished goods, you try to keep material inventory, raw material and packing material inventory. I think it is very, very important to reduce inventory, because as much money or cash you are able to save for the organization, you are able to put it back into the system for the marketing to grow the brands, to grow the business. That's the way supply chain looks at it and tries to solve this problem.
So let's move to inventory to the warehousing.
No, in this, as far as inventory planning is concerned, is more of a manufacturer or the service seeker's job. And as far as supply chain or logistic industry is concerned, it is basically execution of that inventory. And the challenge it comes in case, especially in case of FMCG, it comes, as I said earlier, since first topic we discussed both demand planning and inventory planning. So it comes here that in inventory planning, what happens is in warehouse, especially it's a FIFO method and it's batch wise and date wise. So the execution comes, the problem comes there in for us that if it is not fully technologically advanced or it's not having a WMS, most of FMCG do not have WMS in warehouse level, and also some of them does not have barcoding and everything. So taking out batch and that also first in first out as per date becomes a huge challenge for a warehouse operator. So it's more of an execution problem of managing inventory planning, which is for us basically.
Right. So basically from inventory to basically we are talking about just in time kind of a concept, which is replenish model, which help you to lower the inventory, and the agile manufacturing is supposed to be there. How integrated in terms of the technology it is? I mean, how different channels are integrated with the up to the manufacturing level or maybe the up to planning level?
Very relevant point. So to be able to run a efficient replenishment system, it is very, very important that the whole supply chain, which is end to end, should be integrated. So
to actual consumption.
Absolutely. So ideally what is required is from your consumer to your material supplier, the whole system should be integrated. Whether it is integrated today, I think partially it is, but there is a distance to cover. For example, we have, say, more than 5,000 distributors all across the country. So at present today, probably we have this daily data from them, or more frequent than even daily actually. That data is available from, say, about 4,000 of those distributors. 80% of the business is covered there. But 20%, 15 to 20% of the business is still not fully integrated into this system. So that is one challenge which is there. At the same time, at the back end also, we are completely integrated from our distribution centers to our raw material, packing material warehouses. However, beyond that, which is our own material suppliers, we are not fully integrated there as well. So that is one challenge which we are undergoing. But hopefully, at least for our customers, we will be fully integrated in the next maybe 12 to 18 months. That's the path which we have defined for ourselves, that we need to be completely integrated. This is with respect to our own distributors. Then, of course, there are other channels also, which is, today we have quick com, which is one emerging channel which is there. We also have e-commerce and we have modern trade. So there also there is a certain level of integration which is available as of today, but I think it is not fully an efficient system which is available, and a lot of actions are required at that end so that we get fully integrated. However, good part is that these are all companies which are tech heavy, right? So they have already started deploying heavy technology at their end for integrated their own systems. I think it is a matter of time when they also will see value and they start integrating with our systems.
If I may intervene, it is the last mile which is a major problem where the integration does not happen. And with the incoming of major retail chains, quick com, e-com, this has really helped you in your planning. Otherwise, still they are only minor fraction of the total consumption that is done. So that the main challenge happens in the last phase, where and especially due to this the bullwhip effect, which we say bullwhip, that happens. So the planning goes haywire because of the bullwhip effect, where the last mile is not really integrated.
Very, very well said actually. I think we missed one point. Integration in terms of data flow from our customers up to us is one part. The other part is information flow from us to the customer also, right? So there rightly pointed out that the whole transportation piece, which is the secondary transportation from our warehouses to the customer, basically that piece is, that visibility is not there in that system, because multimodal transport which is involved in that, right?
Yes.
So because we are
multi-channel are there,
multi-channel and
transportation is needed.
multimodal.
Still, you can control from your warehouse to the next point, which could be distributor or retailer. Next level, actual consumer is absolutely at dark. Yeah, so that.
So this subject is so vast and so fragmented, and a lot of solution different people are trying at a different level. So let's talk about the warehousing piece out of the. Historically, the large brand or FMCG, as an industry, they are largely depending upon the C&F model. And gradually, those kind of challenges and the solutions offered by warehousing or the logistic or supply chain service providers, they are offering a different solutions. They call it 3PL, third-party logistics service providers. They have their own solutions around it. So brands can focus on their core, and the entire supply chain can be outsourced to large professional organizations. So a lot of C&F is also trying to upgrade themselves to their services to 3PL model. So what is your take out of it?
One correction I'll make in this same question. C&F and CMD is also part of logistic industry, so I don't consider them as separate. It's a model of warehousing which is to do. One is mode of doing is C&F and one is 3PL. They are two different way of doing warehousing, but they both are part of logistic industry.
No, that way everybody is connected.
Yeah.
If you go historically,
Yes.
C&F themselves.
There are pros and cons on both the
So it's
methods, so
fine,
that
but
we can probably do.
In terms of the transformation happening, of course, C&F model is getting to transform to 3PL model.
So I think the supply chain in this aspect is in a transitionary phase right now. So if we see, India is one country, but it is a very diverse country, right? So we say culturally we are very diverse, but I think infrastructure wise also we are quite diverse.
Highly diverse and complex.
And complex also. So India is not only Delhi and Mumbai. India is in the heart of the states, where probably in many geographies the infrastructure is available today. But as I said, that it is in transitionary phase, which means there are pockets where infrastructure is not fully developed. So what do how is this linked basically to your question? If I have to try to link it, historically most of the places were like that, and there were no warehousing zones which were there, no modern warehouses were available. 3PL model is also now emerging.
Yes.
For the last, maybe it's debatable whether it is last 5 years or 10 years, but it is something of recent past. Absolutely. So organizations historically wanted a control over at least kind of infrastructure they were choosing for themselves, right? So they wanted to choose their own warehouse so that they were able to have better control over the costs as far as the warehouse was concerned. They also wanted, many organizations were running their own warehouses because 3PL model was not available. They were not even comfortable with C&F model also. So that's how the whole journey started. Own warehouse, hire the warehouse, and run it also. Then they started outsourcing to C&Fs. Now, of course, in many geographies, 3PLs are emerging, and there are 3PLs who have a national presence also. So organizations have started looking at them. But the fact remains that in all geographies, modern infrastructure of warehousing is not available still. And hence the organizations end up selecting their own warehouses, and then hence they then give this
depending upon
contracts.
the whole model and trying to upgrade that itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is in transitionary phase. You will see definitely 3PLs will emerge as alternates. But as of today, there are multiple challenges also with 3PLs. Definitely the cost element is one such element that costs definitely are increasing, and flexibility also reduces with the 3PL model. The erstwhile C&Fs were able to give more flexibility around the way they were servicing.
They are dedicated to one brand large.
I have a slightly different take on this. Demands create supply. You have not demanded, you don't get that supply of warehouse. So you consciously, FMCG companies chose C&F model mainly because it's cost effective and economies. Okay. So it has compromise. It definitely C&F is a compromise on the quality, the service, and even the compliances, majorly compliances. But since FMCG is a model which is high volume and low value, So they are very stringent on the cost. So they chose to have a cheaper model. So they got CNF. You choose you give peanut, you will get monkeys. So that's the concept. So now then the volume comes. The bigger companies are coming. Companies are becoming larger. Volumes are there. If you have volume, 3PL definitely becomes cheaper and cost effective. Not only cost effective, it becomes much more service focused and also compliance focused, which is becoming more and more stringent now. Government is more and more stringent on these compliances. There are a lot of compliance compromises which is done at CNF level, which cannot happen now. So there is a natural shift towards 3PL. This as far as this thing. So I don't agree that facility will get available. We are evolving. So if you demand something, supply will come.
As I was saying earlier, India is a diverse country. So these are diverse views. I think this was specifically a sales pitch for a 3PL. But
No. I'm saying, as I said, 3PH and CNF both are same, both are logistic. I don't differentiate them. It is what you require, you get. So if you pay peanuts, you will get.
so I think C&F is also a 3PL.
He's also 3PL.
So he's also a 3PL.
yeah,
so
that's
I
a
was
second
making
part
a
of it.
point. I think probably you are referring to more organized 3PLs here who have a national presence, whereas a C&F is also a 3PL. Now, what the point which I was making was that since the warehousing infrastructure was not available in the past and companies wanted a control over warehousing because they were wanting compliances to be there, not all organizations are ignoring compliances. So for example, Dabur wanted compliant warehouse and C&Fs were not able to provide those compliant warehouses. So we went out and searched our own warehouses. We did
That's what I'm saying.
because we have to.
become a very serious issue, so you have no choice. You have to look
So we invested because we were doing contracts for 9 years and 10 years, and we were putting our own infrastructure there. We were doing our own capital expenditure there because we wanted to enhance the infrastructure and ensure compliance is there. So that's how this whole journey basically is the start of the journey we were depending on C&S because we wanted to do our own warehouses and these historic.
And they, within the system, as a vertical dedicated to the FMCG, they develop those kind of integration and at that level of a trust.
There is a very typical challenge in FMCG industry as far as warehousing is concerned. I'll slightly going beyond further. See, nowadays when we are trying to go for 3PL, naturally there is upgradation every level. Even the warehouses are getting A-grade facilities. So earlier it was godown, then it became a warehouse, which are not so compliant or quality conscious. Now it is grade A warehouse. Grade A has a certain specification. So what happens is grade A warehouse are all new concept. So it is no more available in the old location. It's a new property. Property rates have gone up. So the cost have gone up. Godowns are situated in the city and you cannot have warehouse there. So now you go to new property, the cost is slightly high. The construction cost is high because it's a grade A facility. The flooring is of different level. The height is of different level. There are all compliances. The area that you have to leave total box and the total area, there's a ratio of that, 50%, something like that. And then other features like water harvesting or water, FIR compliances. So the cost has become really high. What happens in case of this thing is, when the cost becomes very high, it becomes very logical that you go vertical. So that you save on the cost. That's how you save on the cost. When you go for a modern facility, the cost is going to be slightly higher than the godown. But how do you manage to really match the cost is by going vertical. Okay. But in case of FMCG, it's a high turnaround product. It's a high, so you cannot have vertical warehousing. It does not make much sense to go for vertical warehousing because you keep on it comes and goes out. It's a complete turnaround is much faster than FMCD or other products. So it does not make sense. So if you do not go for so it's a pallet storage. So you cannot go vertical. But then the modern warehousing, when you look for a warehouse, there are certain things which anyway grade A warehouse has. Only difference between a good warehouse for FMCG and FMCD or auto is height is not there. Otherwise, flooring has to be really good. All other compliances like space you leave, FIR compliances, all other compliance have to be maintained. So the cost of warehouse actually becomes slightly costlier for FMCG. But their expectation is that the warehouse should be at much least. See, FMCG will be very happy if you give a warehouse to him at 9 rupees, 10 rupees. Let me complete. See, FMCG will be very happy because high volume, low margin. So they'll be very happy if you give a warehouse at 9 rupees. And if you give 11 rupees, 15 is the maximum they will stretch. They will not go beyond 15. Whereas others will go for 22, 23, 24, 26 also they will go, because they will go vertical and they will save the cost. FMCG is not able to save the cost because they're not able to go vertical. So they will say 15. They want modern warehouse also. That's where the challenge comes to us as supply chain, that you want modern warehouse, but you can't go height, so you'll pay 11 rupees to 15 rupees, and it becomes a great challenge for us. So this is a typical challenge. I'm sure you would like to comment on this. It's a very natural problem. I understand FMG side problem also.
It's a vertical only storing will help the, reduce the cost, or it's a cross docking. They are more looking for a cross docking kind of thing.
So let us first of all understand that why, ultimately warehousing and as I said, inventory, etc., is not required by the consumer, right? It is only us supply chain people who are pushing for it, and hence so much storage is required, right? I think for an FMCG company, first thing is that center of any talk has to be the consumer, right? Consumer today is very, very cost sensitive. An FMCG company cannot put all the costs on top of the consumer's head and demand that money from them. They will not be paying. There is competition which is there in the market. If the product of competition is priced, the value which you are delivering is, better value product is available in the market, consumer will quietly shift to that product, and we do not want that. So hence, controlling the cost is extremely, extremely important from the consumer's point of view. From organization's point of view also, you need to control cost because you want to deploy that money back into the system for the company to grow. So cost control is very, very important. Yes. Compliance also is, and hence, as I said, it is in transitionary phase. We want better control over the compliances. Hence, we go out and search our own warehouses, make sure that they are compliant, do the investment, do the capexes. Fire safety is required. Then we'll put the hydrants, we put the sprinklers on our own, and take care of rest of the compliances also. And in the transitionary phase, of course, there will be a journey over the next maybe 5 to 10 years. There will be a movement towards more organized players in future who definitely will be, they have to be competitive for us to be attractive.
Yes, no, as I said, I understand the need for cost saving because you are a model which is high volume and low margin. The challenge that we face is so definitely these new warehouses improve your performance also, your serviceability also. So there has to be, and I'm sure many of these multinational companies are going for a better warehouse at a better price, but still this problem remains in many FMCG companies that they don't want to pay more than 10 rupees, 11 rupees kind of a thing. Stretch maximum, they will push to 15. And this becomes a situation where there is a no meeting point,
So somebody is supplying the demand. I'll just share you on this perspective, real life example, and one of the case study. It's happened last 6 months itself. I won't name it, the organization. Globally, one of the biggest FMCG giant is having a captive kind of a 3PL, who one company globally taking care of 60% of their 3PL services, right? They themselves are the Australia-based company serving this large global giant, right? Correct. And another 40% is served by another partner. So they are just promoted or globally multinational C&F, right? Serving in the form of a 3PL to the global giant. Recently, they messed up the entire one of the facility in North India itself. And that particular facility win over by India's homegrown transport company who converted into a 3PL model, right? Because they provided those complex solutions and of course offer that same pricing or better pricing. So companies from a logistics standpoint or the supply chain service provider standpoint, if they are offering a similar or better services, of course companies are willing to consider.
Yeah, so I think to sum up, the point is that C&Fs are also 3PLs in a way. Yes, yes. They are not integrated.
They are also diversifying.
They are also diversifying. They are not completely integrated today because many organizations have taken control over some part of the solution, which is kind of say warehousing or maybe some other parts, for example, maybe transportation also, because they have to invest in transportation. So some of the Indian FMCG companies which are into foods and maybe where temperature control is required, they are investing their own money for the transportation, for developing the transport, or they are doing the contracts with the transport providers directly. So some portions, because the C&Fs have not completely evolved, so some portions are being controlled by the organizations. It is in transitionary phase, and
the whole function is might not go.
As I rightly said, again, as you said that CNF and logistic companies are same. So CNF has not evolved because people do not want them to be evolved at the time. Now where they are giving chance, they are coming out and they are doing 3PL. So nothing wrong in CNF. They gave what you want. As there is a demand, there is a supply.
So we had a very good discussion, right? We gone to the complete detail of a warehousing, and it is an evolving phase. From our audience or the viewers' perspective, the immense opportunities are there. Have you heard from the global supply chain head and the discussion and this between the service provider and the service seeker? So there's an immense opportunity for a 3PL service providers to upgrade themselves with the need and expectations of the client. Of course, the cost efficiency and then the different requirement you've just learned while discussion. तो आज का जो पॉडकास्ट है और चैट शो जो हम लोग करने वाले हैं वो इतना इंटेंस है, सब्जेक्ट बहुत लार्ज है, बीइंग FMCG सप्लाई चेन का. तो इसको हम लोग 2 पार्ट में रिलीज करेंगे. Initially, we are starting the discussion from all the way from demand forecasting, followed by inventory, followed by quality and manufacturing, and then followed by warehousing and related solutions, and then distribution and reverse logistics. And then second part will be on competition, industry, little bit inside about the Dabur India business management or supply chain management, and new entrant into the organizations, how global perspective of FMCG giants like Nestle, Hindustan Lever, Procter and Gamble, Cadbury are the national giant, the global giants. How are Indian companies become global giant in a time to come and of course to come? So those discussion will be in a second part. So just stay tuned with Logistics Shakti podcast. This podcast is going to be delivered to you into 2 parts, right? So again, lastly, I am very thankful to entire my audiences and the viewers who are giving an immense response and continuously subscribing our channel, which is helping them to reach out the latest information and the latest video quickly. Thank you very much for that response to you.